Hello students, welcome to Renu's Englishpedia. Today we are going to do the topic Analytical Writing. Analytical writing is a form of descriptive writing which is written on the basis of a given chart, graph, data, outline, clues, table or any other such thing. It requires an analysis and comparison of the given facts and the ability to draw conclusions based on the given data. The student must examine the given data methodically and in detail. They must then be able to interpret and explain it. There are certain methods and tricks in interpreting and explaining this data, and we will be studying these in this video. The first trick is to remember the acronym DAMS. In DAMS, the D stands for to define the problem, A stands for analyzing the problem, M stands for making an argument, and S stands for supporting it with evidence. This will become the basis of our analytical writing. When attempting analytical writing, we should be brief and comprehensive, but we must remember to include all the details. We have to state only the given facts and we should avoid all personal observations and opinions. We should use simple, crisp, concise, and accurate language. We should not try to embellish the facts. We should mention the given figures and quantities accurately. Be very careful while mentioning them because any error can make your analytical writing wrong. And last, we have to remember to use the passive form of writing. The passive form of writing means where the action done is more important than the person doing the action. And the last point we have to remember is that we should follow the same tense throughout our analytical writing. Now, before we actually study analytical writing, we must understand what is meant by data. There are different kinds of data available like flowchart, mind map, route map, process map, geographical maps, line graph, bar graph and pie graph. But normally in your 10th standard exams, you will be generally asked questions based on either line graph, bar graph or pie graph. Now in this flowchart, I have picked the example of the chapter, The Making of a Scientist. Richard E. Bright's character can be described as being determined, hardworking, brilliant, and having a curious mind. Again, we can see the influence of his mother and Dr. Frederick Urquhart on his upbringing, on his development as a scientist. We can see that the mother was very encouraging, supportive, and caring. She was a very important driving force in his life, and she provided for all his emotional, academic, and mental needs. Again, in the book which his mother gifted to him, he found the reference of Dr. Frederick Urquhart, and he was a prominent scientist who was researching on monarch butterflies. And when Richard contacted him, Dr. Frederick provided him valuable guidance. Again, his social studies teacher also had a very good impression about Richard E. Bright, and he helped the social studies teacher, that is Richard Weir, helped him in becoming a good debater and speaker. Last, we can see that Richard E. Bright's fellow scholar was named James R. Wong, with whom Richard did many experiments and also gave his cell development theory. So with all this data given, we can easily write a paragraph on Richard E. Bright. Data can also be made available through a mind map. I have taken the example of the chapter Madam Rides a Bus to explain how the mind map works. The important key points of the chapter along with pictures will help us to interpret the data. For example, Valiyamma had the desire to ride a bus. In order to do that, she had to do careful planning as regards to the time when she could go and the money that would be required. She decided on the time that when her mother would be sleeping in the afternoon would be the best time for her bus ride. And she needed 60 paisa for her trip to the town. On the way to the town, she saw the blue sky, the canals, the palm tree, the grasslands, and most important of all, a cow running in the middle of the road. The next point of the chapter is the wait at the bus stop when she saw the colorful market, and we are also made aware of the kind nature of the bus conductor who offered Valiyamma a cold drink. The return journey is a very important aspect of the chapter because it was while she was returning home that she saw the dead cow. This was the same cow who had been full of life and was running in the middle of the road while Valiyamma was going to town. A route map offers directions from one place to another. Looking at the arrows, we are supposed to describe how we are supposed to get from one point to the second point. In a process map, some kind of process or a procedure is explained, and we have to follow the points in order to write a paragraph. Depending upon the data given, a geographical map will tell you what is famous in which state or country, and a paragraph can be written on the same. When talking about the different graphs, we have to remember that there are two axes, x-axis and y-axis, which will give us the required data. In a line graph, a line is used to show when something is in trend or when something loses its momentum. A bar graph uses bars to represent the data. It may represent the soaring amounts, the minimum amounts, and it can also give data on different products. In a pie graph, there is a circle which represents the whole. This circle is divided into different parts depending upon the ratio of the data given. Having understood the different kinds of data available, now it is time to know how to write an analytical paragraph. The first step in writing this paragraph is to describe the graph or the data that is the subject in one or two lines indicating what is most evident. After that, we have to analyze the trends, we have to use relevant figures, make comparisons and contrasts, and also show similarities. We have to organize the information. At the end, we are supposed to give a conclusion, that is, the overall summary or the relationship between the different trends. When we are writing the analytical paragraph, we have to remember to write in one paragraph only. It is just one paragraph. We should not divide it into different paragraphs. The word limit for the same is 100 to 120 words. Now the next question comes, how do we organize the information? First, we should talk about the large prominent differences. After that, we should contrast the smallest and the largest figures or the quantities. Then we should mention the similarities, and later on the constant or the unchanged factors. In order to write a smooth flowing analytical paragraph, it is very important to be familiar with some vocabulary. So I have included a list of phrases and words which will help you to write a good analytical paragraph. When introducing the subject, phrases like the given chart describes, or the given table suggests, or the line graph shows, or the data given provides the information about, or the pie chart illustrates can be used to introduce the subject. When talking in the body, words like similarly, in contrast with, in comparison to, however, or whereas, as opposed to, while, a striking difference, or a noticeable difference will bring about a smooth change. For describing trends, we can use phrases like pattern of growth, relationship between, rapidly doubled, skyrocketed, peaked, striking increase, striking changes, soaring rates, leveled off, stagnated, or fluctuating. For quantities, we can use phrases like one third of, nearly one fourth of, majority, on an average, twice as much, almost equal, the highest or the lowest approximately, and such other phrases can be used. When writing the conclusion, we should use phrases like overall, subsequently, in all, in a nutshell, in short, or therefore. Words like rise, jump, grow, climb, go up, increase, rocket, peak, or soar help to describe the increasing trends, and words like fall, drop, decline, decrease, go down, plunge, plummet help to describe the decreasing trends. When we want to describe how the change occurred, adverbs like sharply, quickly, rapidly, steeply, considerable, significantly, substantially, steadily, gradually, moderately, or slightly or slowly help to describe better. To describe constancy, we can use a combination of words like to stay constant, or to remain stable, or to remain steady, or to maintain constancy. Any such combination of words can be used. There are other words to indicate content like depicts, illustrates, portrays, exhibits, or suggests. Having learned the different kind of data available, the ways to write an analytical paragraph, and the important vocabulary, it is now time to study some examples. But before we do this, a last reminder that please we should always only state the facts. We should never ever give our own opinions. Facts are most important. In order to write a good paragraph, the beggar is a nice example. The top bun is the introduction, the middle part is the body of your paragraph, and the bun below is your conclusion. If we remember to add all the spices and all the condiments, then our analytical paragraph will turn out as tasty as a burger. The chart given below shows the division of household tasks by gender in Great Britain. We have to write an analytical paragraph describing the chart given in not more than 100 to 120 words. The first step in writing an analytical paragraph is to interpret the data given. Having studied statistics in mathematics, I am sure that most of you must be well aware of the common components in statistics. For those of you who do not know, we have two axes in a graph, the x-axis and the y-axis. The x-axis is the horizontal line and the y-axis is the vertical line. So in this graph, on the x-axis, we have the different household tasks, and on the y-axis, we have time in minutes per day which the different genders spend doing these tasks. The bar graph in the red shows the work done by the males, while the bar graph in blue shows the work done by the females. We can very clearly see that the maximum participation of males is in the tasks like gardening and pet care, while their minimum contribution is in tasks like clothes, washing, ironing, and sewing. We can also see that the maximum responsibility of the tasks on female lies in the area of cooking, baking and washing up, and their least participation is in tasks like maintenance and odd jobs. Using this interpretation, we can easily write our analytical paragraph while adding the specific quantities to the interpretations we have made, and the end result will turn out: the given graph shows the time spent by British men and women on the different household tasks. This is then our opening statement. This is followed by the body. At a glance, we can see that as compared to men, women are more involved in household tasks. On an average, women spend approximately 195 minutes, which is almost 3 times the time spent by men on tasks like cooking, baking, cleaning, laundry, and looking after the children, whereas it is only 65 minutes each day by a male. In contrast, we can see that men spend double the time as compared to women on tasks like gardening, pet care, maintenance, and odd jobs. The highest time spent is almost 50 minutes on tasks like gardening and pet care. On the other hand, women spend only around 9 to 21 minutes on the same tasks. The time spent by men in washing, ironing, and sewing clothes is as low as 2 minutes per day as opposed to 25 minutes spent by women. Here we end our body and start with our concluding sentence. In a nutshell, women spend far more time doing household chores than men, whilst men prefer gardening, pet care, maintenance, and odd jobs. Okay, let us take up one more example. In the next question, we have the given line graph shows the birth and death rates in a country from 1901 to 2101. We have to write an analytical paragraph in around 100 to 120 words. As I have already told you, the first step is the interpretation of the data given. So we will first study the line graph. On the x-axis, we can see the years from 1901 to 2101. On the y-axis, we have the birth and the death rate. Please see that there are 3 zeros given over here. The 3 zeros indicate in thousands. 10 means 10,000, 20 means 20,000, and so on. Had there been 2 zeros, it would have indicated hundreds, and had there been 1 zero, it would have indicated tens. But 3 zeros should be interpreted as thousands. We can also see at a glance that the birth rate is higher than the death rate until 2041. The year 2041 can be seen as very important as it shows a sudden change in the trend. The death rate goes up and the birth rate comes down. Such trends should always be taken into account and mentioned. We can further see that the birth rate peaked in the year 1961 and reached 65,000. We can also see a fluctuation in the birth rate from 1961 followed by a decline till the year 2101. Fluctuation means the zigzag lines which we can also see when measuring our pulse rate. The death rate is initially lower than the birth rate but increases steadily. There is a striking increase in the death rate in the year 2021, leveling off between 2061 and 2081 with a slight decline in the year 2101. After interpreting the graph, The information can be written as the given line graph shows the birth and death rates starting from the years 1901 till 2101. This is the beginning statement or the opening statement. Since 1901, the birth rate has remained considerably higher than the death rate until 2041. It was 20,000 in 1901 and started increasing gradually. It peaked in 1961 to around 65,000. From 1961, the birth rate has fluctuated multiple times between 50,000 and 60,000. However, it is expected to decline in the coming years, reaching approximately 42,000 by 2101. On the other hand, the death rate was around 10,000 in 1901 and then rose steadily. It is expected to rise strikingly from the year 2021 before leveling off to approximately 60,000 between 2061 and 2081. The graph indicates a slight decline in deaths in the year 2101. We can conclude from the graph that there is a wide gap between the birth and the death rate during 1961 to 2001. However, this gap is expected to reduce in the later years. Over here, we end the body and begin with our concluding statement. Overall, as opposed to the prevailing trends, the death rate will be more than the birth rate in the later half of the 21st century. I hope that you are now equipped with all the vocabulary and the information required to write a good analytical paragraph. Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Renu's Englishpedia. Happy writing!